language is an environment. You know, it's like you're a fish swimming in the water. If the water is English, you speak English. That's kind of how I think about it. A lot of those interactions were heartwarming. It's great that people care about you. It's great that they want to talk to you. It's also a lot to stack on a trip to the grocery store. So yeah, I'm very surprised by the education my kids are getting here in Japan.
Hey, today I've got Jeff, and I was on his podcast, and we did a very long podcast, like a 4-hour podcast. Today we're going to try to hit like about an hour, and if we go over, no worries. But just had a few things to talk about. So you've been in Japan how many years now? About 20?
Yeah, I came here in 2000. By the way, thank you for joining my podcast. That was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to go 3 hours and however many minutes we went. That was
That was fun.
epic. That was a lot of fun. I came here in 2000, August of 2000. Did a year as an exchange student. Went back to the U.S. I was already planning to come back because I had such a good time as an exchange student that I wanted to stay longer. So I got a sister city gig, kind of while I was in Japan as a student. I was able to apply. Took the bullet train out to Nagano, not realizing that it was like 10 degrees cooler. So I was wearing like summer clothes later in the year, and it was like freezing balls in Nagano when I arrived. And I'm like, holy shit, I had to stay the night and everything. I didn't even have any clothes or anything. Just this stupid fucking student that I was. Anyway, am I allowed to cuss? Is that okay? Or do you? Okay, stupid student that I was, and stupid student that I still am of life. I cuss without asking. Came out to Nagano, got the job, went back to Oregon, passed whatever test was required to get the 2-year language requirement, graduated, got my degree, immediately flew back to Japan, and then I was here for 2 years as an ALT slash Sister City Friendship Ambassador. Went back, never thinking that I would come back to Japan again. Was getting ready for graduate school, and like my former employer, the town office, the Yakuba, called me, and they're like, we're having trouble with the current ALT. We would love you to come back. And I was like, shit, why not? So came back, and I've been back ever since. So it was only 9 months, basically, give or take, that I've been back in the United States since 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you experience reverse culture shock when you got back to the States?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so as a student in Tokyo in 2000, I did tend to hang out with a lot of other international exchange students at Waseda. So we were cloistered for sure. We tried to break out. We tried to make Japanese friends. And we were doing homestay. So I guess there's an immersion there in the homestay environment. But you're still you've got a security net. You've got all your student buddies that you hang out with. And then I moved to the countryside. And this was, prior to the internet, I would say, for me, because in the countryside of Japan, we were just kind of getting the internet going out there, I feel like, in 2001. And it was slow as hell. I had this computer. It took me half a year to get the internet hooked up in my apartment, and it was just slow as shit anyway. I didn't know how to use it even. I was still kind of a novice at the internet. So then after 2 years of just communicating with people primarily in Japanese, because the English teachers back then couldn't even really speak English. That was one thing that I found absolutely shocking, especially after a year at Waseda, where university students are very conversant in English. They're, university professors, so I guess that's to be expected. But out in the deep countryside, which, by the way, is where my podcast gets its name, Deep in Japan. It's not because I'm having deep thoughts, but because I live deep in the Inaka. And another guy was like, "Oh, your balls deep in Japan. I get it." And I'm like, no, it's not sexual. It's not philosophical. It's just deep countryside. But in any event, after 2 years in the countryside of just speaking Japanese and hanging out with people, doing a lot of boozing on the weekend with the Yakuba folks, it was a bit weird going back to America. It's more weird now, or weirder.
Yeah.
I guess I've already forgotten my English teacher ways. It's weirder going back to the U.S. nowadays than it was after 2 or 3 years. I feel like I don't get shocked or anything anymore. I feel like I work for a U.S. IT firm. I have been for 7 years now, so I'm connected with the external world now more than I've ever been in Japan because of that. And I love working with my U.S. team. It's great. Like I absolutely love the people for the most part in America. There's just something fundamentally fucked up about America, though. When I go back, it's hard not to notice it because things function so well in Japan that I
Mm,
think that is where you're there's a gap or a schism there where you're like, gosh, why can't America just? I mean, we've got this powerful economy. It's a dynamo in terms of. I mean, some people refer to it as an empire. I don't know if we're out there colonizing places anymore, but it's a huge dynamic country that largely perceived to be the most powerful country in the world, and yet they can't get their shit together. And when you go back, it's blatantly obvious after you've lived out of the United States for a while just how dysfunctional it is, despite
mm,
how cool the people are.
yeah.
I don't understand why that is the case.
Yep. Well, I was always struck by, I had struggled with my weight, a couple of times in my life and kind of got it under control, but I was always struck by seeing people in the States, the sizes, the obesity, they call it the obesity epidemic.
Yeah,
And I remember sitting down having dinner with people, and gosh, we went to Olive Garden one time, and by the time dinner came, I was full because they give you a salad bowl. And I thought the salad bowl was for the whole table. They give you a salad bowl it looks like a cookie bowl.
wow.
And I said, "Oh, can we get a plate? Because in Japan they give you one big dish, and then everybody gets their toris on it, right? You get your small plate." And I was looking around, and they gave each person a salad bowl that must have been two heads of lettuce.
Yeah,
And then they
there's so
bring
many
out
things
just
about if you want to talk about weight and like
yeah,
it's really weird. I came to Japan. The first meal I had was sukiyaki. I can remember it very well, and I remember Japanese people just gobbling it up and drinking at the same time, and me thinking, holy shit, these little people. Because when you first get there, you're like, wow, everybody's so slender. Everybody's so smaller than fat old me. What's going on here? And you see them just put away the food. And you've seen probably Kobayashi, the hot dog eating champion. I'm sure that's old
mm-hmm,
news by now.
yep,
Nowadays, when you watch Japanese TV, there's this group of ladies that just I don't know any of their names. I'm sorry, but a lot of times I'll see the Ogui champions on TV, and it's like ladies, and they just put away the food, and they're not, they're
mm-hmm,
petite.
yep,
So there's this contradiction of like, how can people so small put away so much food? And
mm-hmm,
how can people who eat so many carbs remain thin? Because a lot
mm-hmm,
of, what we learn in the West is that, carb intolerance, I suppose, is what's
mm-hmm,
responsible for a lot of
yeah,
weight gain. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of walking. People walk in Tokyo like
yeah,
crazy. I'm sure you do as well.
a lot.
Um, yeah, there's that. Out here in the countryside, there's not so much walking. We have cars, especially out here in Nagano. It's a very because of the mountainous terrain. I mean, there are some trains, but for the most part, you're getting around by like K truck, K car, or in my case, 2024 Toyota Velfire, absolutely amazing, highly recommended, 10 of 10. But we exercise in the rice fields. People are out there. You've got a plot. Our family has seven. Cutting grass like crazy the last few weeks in preparation for Obon. So you're moving and you're shaking. And I think a lot of that activity is actually why people can consume so much and
Mm-hmm.
stay so thin.
Yeah, yeah. And back to this dinner, we finished these salads, and I'm stuffed. This is after living in Japan about 5 years, so I'm at the
Is
Olive
this
Garden in the
recent? Did you go to
States.
the Olive Garden
No,
recently? Because I haven't been there in like
no, no,
30
no. This
years.
is like, yeah, a long time ago. So when I was living in Japan and I went back to the States, went to Olive Garden, they give us this massive salad and breadsticks. The breadsticks just keep coming, right? And
Yeah.
I'm stuffed, and then dinner comes. I had ordered chicken Alfredo pasta, and I was
It sounds
expecting
like the
like
last meal that I had there, exactly to the
yeah, yeah,
same
and so
menu items, the breadsticks.
yeah, and I'm expecting this like a slice of chicken on a little plate of pasta, and they brought this plate, and once again, it looked like it was for the whole table, right?
Yeah.
This massive plate of pasta and two chicken breasts on top, and I was like, do people really eat this much? And like, maybe when you got to dinner, maybe. But then I hung out with friends, and they had a massive dinner, and then we sat down and watched TV all night. And then they had like potato chips and Coke and stuff while they're watching TV. And I thought, well, we're sitting around all day. We drive to the store, get a bunch of food, come back, sit down and eat a big dinner, and then watch TV. And no wonder people, get fat. And I think it's also quality of food. So when we say
Sure.
Japanese eat a lot of carbs, like the rice here is grown here, right? It's very high quality. People consume that. And I think they consume more at business dinners or parties. Because I know people who will have a big dinner and the next day they're like, oh, I had too much last night. I'll skip breakfast and lunch today.
That was one thing I noticed too.
Yeah.
Before intermittent fasting was a thing, I remember when I was a student at Wassa, there was a beautiful girl. There was a few that I was chasing. Didn't do very
A
well
couple.
in any of that chasing. Did not perform well, but did my best. Gave it the old college try. Anyway,
Sure.
there's this girl that I just thought was amazing, and I really wish she was my girlfriend. So I was kind of talking to her. We were friends, and she had a big nomikai the night before, and the next day she didn't eat until dinner, and I just thought that was wild because growing up in the States, it's religion. You wake
Hmm.
up and you can have some
Yep.
pancakes or some cereal, orange juice, whatever it may be. Usually carbs on carbs, but
Yep.
that wasn't something that I'd heard before. She didn't call it intermittent fasting or even
Yep.
fasting. Certainly, danjiki isn't a word that you hear many Japanese people say, but
No,
nowadays
no.
you do hear people talking about intermittent fasting.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I think you're right. I think for sure people at Enkai's really tie it on in every sense of the term, but probably dial it back
Yeah.
after an
The
Enkai on a
next day,
day-to-day
yeah.
basis. Probably eat fewer
Hmm.
carbs. I'm sure you can look it up. The average Japanese
Sure, sure.
probably consumes 1,000 or 2,000 less calories than the average American would be my guess.
Sure, sure. And then also I studied since I had struggled with my weight. I studied like how to lose weight, right? And they said you have to do sprints and you have to do intermittent fasting. You have to do this, have to do that, have to add some, strength training, lift something.
Yeah,
And so I think about daily life in Tokyo and when the train is coming and you got 30 seconds to make it to the platform, you got to sprint.
yeah,
Or the bus is coming, you sprint, 100 meters to the bus. Well, that's also this, what do they call it, unsensible or insensible, like you don't recognize it that you're exercising, but you're sprinting 100 meters
mm,
and that actually gets the heart rate going and that actually helps people maintain weight. But if you ask a Japanese person, they might ride their bicycle to the station,
yeah,
and most Japanese people I know are always like a minute behind schedule. So they're
sure,
rushing to the train station on a bicycle, not one of these electronic assisted bicycles, but like a mamacharin where you actually have to pedal. They're sprinting to the station. They run up the stairs to catch the train. They're almost late to work, so they run across the street to get to work. And then, like, they've put in like 10,000 steps during the day without even knowing it. But if you put a gun to their head, they would say, under threat of death, they would say, I never exercise. But if you're to check their watch, they're getting 10,000 steps a day. They're getting maybe 10 staircases a day,
yeah.
right? They're sprinting intermittently a couple times a day. And so I think that's one, and in the States, they would say, oh, that guy's got high metabolism. Or the opposite, they'd say, I got big bones, as they're eating a piece of cake saying, I need to lose weight, I got big bones. It's a family thing, so, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to talk about obesity in Japan versus America, but more like, we talked last time about raising kids in Japan, and I have a daughter who's 16 now. She was born in America,
Hmm.
and we decided, and I'll give a little background to this, the lore here, is that I'd seen so many people who had all the best intentions of raising their kids to be bilingual. And in the States, it's pretty hard unless you have a whole community to support that. So, but they would say, okay, have a Japanese wife, American husband, we're going to raise our kids to be bilingual.
Yeah.
But they're going to go to an American kindergarten, so we're going to teach them English first. Massive mistake if you're overseas. So I had a couple friends, they had two little kids. The kids started speaking English to each other. And then the mom would say something to them in Japanese, they would reply in English. And they did this because they wanted their kids to go to kindergarten in America and speak English.
Hmm.
And then we'll teach them Japanese. But by the time they got around to teaching them Japanese, the kids weren't interested.
Right.
So I thought, okay, I'll do the opposite. I'm going to set up YouTube, and this is before smart TVs were really a thing. I'm going to put YouTube on the TV in the living room, and we're going to watch only Japanese content. So, I mean, like the day we brought her home from the hospital, there's, Okasan Toi show, like a Japanese NHK TV show streaming on
Mm.
YouTube on the TV, listening to Japanese kids' songs, watching anime geared toward, babies and toddlers.
Yeah.
And, some people would criticize me because they say like, well, your daughter doesn't speak in English. I'm like, no, it'll be fine. Trust me. By
Yeah.
the time she was 5, she spoke fluent English, went to kindergarten. She had to ask a couple different words like, how do I say this in English? But now she's bilingual.
Hmm.
And, I'd done this partially because I saw other friends make the mistake of not doing that. And so, but I wanted to get your thoughts and your experience and your opinion on raising bilingual kids. And you're doing this in Japan, right? So how does that
Yeah.
work?
So yeah. So I approached it initially with the idea of just language is an environment. It's like you're a fish swimming in the water. If the water is English, you speak English. That's kind of how I think about it. And when you grow up living in Japan, if you don't have an English environment, there's no reason for you to speak English, and you're going to struggle with it. So my thought was create micro environments, if you will, where my kids will be exposed to English, other than just talking to their father. I didn't think that would be enough. I had read some books about it. I want to say one that really impacted me was um, oh gosh, was it the Nurture Shock or the Nature Shock? I'll shoot the link to you later. Maybe it was the Nurture Shock. In any event, it was about the nature versus nurture argument. It was the author was well versed in psychology and the literature. She was a textbook writer, and she was looking at all the data that said, if you're raising, let's say that you're a Japanese couple and you work in the United States and you want your kids to be bilingual, good luck. If their peers speak English, and you haven't done too much effort to keep the Japanese inside of them, as it were, what you end up seeing is, especially over longer periods of time, like if it's not just a 5 year stint, but like their career is going to be in America. If those kids are run through the U.S. educational system, even if their parents speak Japanese at the home, what ends up happening is the kids can hear it and understand a good chunk of it, of what they're hearing, but they can't produce the language very well. Uh, Definitely, they would be English dominant. If they did start to study Japanese because they were impelled to for some reason, they might obviously have an advantage because they'd been hearing it from their parents their whole life, but they wouldn't be very good speakers or writers of Japanese. So having understood that, I thought, well, I need to create English environments for my kids because we live here in Japan. So from a very early age, I started showing them, videos, and a lot of it was, kids movies like Totoro, for example. But we would watch the whatever Disney version of the English dub there was. So every video that we watched together, and we watched a lot of videos. Kids love watching videos, and it's very repetitive with them. And I was kind of skeptical at first whether that would work, but they did grab sentences whole cloth from, you know, for example, Totoro, for example. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but one thing stands out in my memory, and that's when, if I remember correctly, Mei-chan was jumping on her father saying, "Wake up, Papa, wake up." My kid did that to me like the next day, and I was like, holy shit, they're producing the language that they heard watching the videos. So, and because I got them going on videos in English early and was very consistent in providing that, in other words, all videos will be English videos, they prefer it to this day. So my kids are definitely Japanese dominant, and they're starting to enjoy a lot more Japanese media as they get older. I've got a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and they watch both. But let's say that we were going to watch something on Netflix, and there was a choice between watching it in Japanese or watching it in English. 9 times out of 10, they're preferring to watch it in English just because, for whatever reason, their brain says, "Oh, if it's a video, we watch it in English," just from being exposed to that at an early age. So that was great. But one mistake I think I made was overly focusing on video for content when I should have been kind of being a little bit of a taskmaster and forcing them to read early on. So for my eldest child, she definitely has an aversion to reading, and I was that way too as a young one. But my other two, I kind of saw the mistake that I had made and kind of forced them to read English a little bit, just 15, 20, 30 minutes. Started with me reading to them, and then it sort of gradually, they themselves were like, "I don't want to hear, let me read, let me read it, Dad. I don't want to, you don't need to read it for me." And it was kind of tough because they wanted to read it silently. I'm like, no, say it out loud. I want to make sure that you're pronouncing the words correctly. So at first, for the first, half a year or whatever, they would read out loud haltingly and I would kind of help them. And then eventually, reading time, which is what we called it, 30 minutes of reading time before bed, became a silent time where my son would just sit down with a book and read on his own. And he's 10, but I want my kids to read better. So I kind of force them to take the ACAN test nowadays. And they're currently all lined up to take the test this year. My eldest will take NICU. She's going to be a high school student next year. My second daughter is a sixth grader in elementary school. She'll be taking June NICU. This is her first time taking the test, but we've been studying it for a long time. And my son, who's never taken the test, but has done massive amounts of reading, he could easily pass NICU. He reads better than all of them just because we tended to sleep together and I could enforce reading time better because we slept together. He will be taking June NICU, but he can read NICU just so much quicker than the other two. So by adding in the reading component, which is just like 15 to 30 minutes a night, it really turbocharges their acquisition. And I feel like reading is such an important part of it. But yeah, creating environments. It doesn't have to be a video. If you can get them friends who speak English, obviously that's great as well. I live in the middle of the rice fields, again, deep in Japan. So deep, in fact, that I'm just literally surrounded by rice fields. It's actually hard to create an English environment that isn't video. So that's why I chose that method.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were lucky in Los Angeles because we found a ballet teacher who was from Japan. And she taught in English. You had a choice. You could take a class in English or Japanese. And there were enough Japanese kids that she taught a class every Saturday in Japanese. And I thought, well, so with Japanese, one thing that solidified my Japanese was I was into cars, and I've talked about this a million times, but I was so into cars that I would pick up these Japanese car magazines and I would read like all the different vocabulary for, engines and brakes and aero parts and stuff. I thought, well, what you have to do is not just learn it, but you have to use it for something, right? So we thought if she takes a class in Japanese, awesome. And that helped me too. I mean, as an adult, I started learning Japanese at 21, and as soon as I got to the point where I could take classes in Japanese, I'd take like an Aikido class, or I even went to a music school. It was to play guitar, and I already knew how to play guitar, but I wanted to hear somebody describe it in Japanese, right? A lot of the vocabulary is the same, but a lot of it's very different, and the thinking, and I also wanted to get better, so using Japanese to learn something really, really helped a lot. I think that's one thing, and we were lucky enough to get my daughter into a bilingual program in California.
Is your daughter in America?
Yeah, she's in America with her mom. Yeah.
Is her mother Japanese? Does she have
Yeah,
a
her
native
mom's
Japanese
Japanese.
speak? Okay, so that's interesting. So, wait, did you meet your ex-wife in a Japanese person in America, or how did that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, she was an exchange student
Okay,
when I was in college. Yeah, so, and this is years ago. So, yeah, we got married and lived in Japan for a while. Went back to America, had our child, and like I said, now she's 16. But uh, a lot of activities, as many activities as we could find, we got her, like you said, in these micro situations where she could speak Japanese. There were a lot of
yeah,
Japanese workers in LA working for the automotive companies and all
right.
the support, parts companies and trading companies. And so in our neighborhood, we had other Japanese families, and the moms would get together, and then naturally the kids would get together, and the dominant language was thankfully Japanese in those cases. So she was able to make friends where she could speak Japanese. And then, but one thing that really turned was one day, now we're not together anymore, but one day I was visiting LA and went to see my daughter, and she said, "Hey, Dad," because she used to speak to me in Japanese.
Wow.
And one day, she called me Dad. I was like, "Oh, I guess we speak English now."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's really fun. Um, I One thing we learned was to narrate what you're doing. So we started from like day one. You know, seriously, newborn, just speaking Japanese to her all the time. And I'm fluent. Of course, her mom's native, so we'd speak Japanese to her exclusively. And I would narrate things like making coffee in the morning,
Hmm.
and I'm just holding her in one arm, and I'm like pouring the water, putting the beans in, hitting the button, and I would repeat the same thing every day. And I thought, okay, I know she's listening. And then at the end of making the coffee, I would say, you know, このボタンを押したら2、3分後コーヒーが出てくる. I pushed this button, and 2 or 3 minutes later, I got a cup of coffee. And one day, I said, このボタンを押したら, and she looked at me, she said, 2、3分後コーヒーが出てくる. And I was like, she heard me. Oh my gosh. Another thing we tried, and this is totally crazy, we tried baby sign language.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's amazing. So I guess the
yeah.
sign for finished is like you raise your hand. I did that wrong. Gonna have to edit that part out.
Well, I mean,
So
apparently it's they can do sign language sooner than they're ready to
yes,
do like,
then they can
vocal
speak. Yeah,
communication. So that's like
yeah,
there's a whole theory behind that. Yeah.
yeah. And I loved it. And so she'd be in her high chair and she would just put her hand up. That means I'm finished. Right. And there were other things like, and I forget the rest of the sign language, but baby sign language was really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like the tiger dad. I was like, I want my kid to be educated because, it was really important for me. I saw what a difference education made in my life that I thought, okay, I wanted to be educated. And there's also this thing of like, if you're educated in America but you speak Japanese, you don't really match up to being educated in Japan. So I wanted to just like not push her, but give her every opportunity. So,
Yeah, I'm very surprised by the education my kids are getting here in Japan. Some people diss it. They're like, "Oh, it's based off of it's test based rote learning."
hmm,
Um, all right, but I felt that way growing up in the United States too. I mean, I
yeah,
felt it's the same shit. Um, but they're learning complex mathematics much quicker
hmm,
than I was back in the States, and so
hmm,
in order to help my kids with their homework. I mean, it's great. We're right on the the IT revolution for AI. So you could snap off a picture of a complex mathematical problem and say, "Hey, break this down for me and explain it
hmm,
to me," and it does that for you.
yep,
So we're kind of in a post. I don't even know how to put it. A post. We're almost approaching a post-education environment
hmm,
where computers will be doing all our thinking for us. Unfortunately, not. I sure hope that human beings will still be thinking a decade from now. But it's great that the gap that is there, with my education
hmm,
not being as premium as my kids' education certainly
hmm,
is,
yeah,
I can certainly get online and meddle up and guide them through the process. It's tough though. I mean, the sheer number of hours that they put in studying and in school. Like for example, today, 6 hours of lessons. Now, I've taught 6 hours of lessons as a teacher. I don't teach anymore, but just that's grueling. I remember
yeah,
being a student and having 6 hours and
hmm,
thinking, holy shit, that's a lot. And then
yeah,
coming home and being expected to do a minimum of 1 hour of homework every single day
hmm,
is wild, and
hmm,
also just thinking about the Japanese language and how many,
hmm,
2,200 Joyo kanji that you have to
yep,
master, by high school. There's a
hmm,
lot. There's a lot there.
yeah. Well, it takes a lot of effort to be Japanese because it's like, in the U.S. we have, spring, summer, fall, winter, or autumn, and in Japan it's like they're the seasons, but then there's also the rainy season. There's also typhoon season. There's also like, I can't even think of the words, but like there's the New Year, there's Obon, it takes so much to know the Japanese calendar. And um, also every location has their own special foods. They have different dialects. They have different,
Sure.
just so much to learn and so much culture to learn. And I was in Kyoto and I thought, well, I've been in Japan 20 years. I know a lot about Japan. But in Kyoto, there was so much stuff that I'd never heard of before.
Hmm.
And my Japanese friends knew this stuff. And it takes a lot of effort to be Japanese. It's not a passive,
Yeah,
it's not
I
a
mean,
passive pursuit.
they've done the math. What is it, like 9 years to become fluent in Japanese? Like for a person who grows up here, whereas what in English, 2.5, something,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
it's the learning curve is much steeper. The cultural learning curve, I feel like, is a lot steeper too. Like the expectation to read the air, kugi o yomu,
Mm,
um, you know, that's a lifetime, and
yeah.
you're gonna break that even as an adult. If you've been raised here, there's going to be times where you do something in society where people around you are like, Jesus, that guy can't read the fucking air.
Yep.
It's even
Origami.
harder,
Yeah.
obviously, for us as foreigners to
Yeah.
read the air, but that is a
Hmm.
challenge. That's a lifetime challenge as well.
It is. Yeah. Well, I think I've had people criticize me and say like, well, English doesn't have as many words as Japanese. And I'm like, well, actually, in America we do have, and people say like, oh, America doesn't have any culture. And what they're confusing is like how old a country is versus how much culture it has. And in the US, we have, the European culture and all the other cultures that contribute. But, we have Greek thought, we have Roman thought, we have, all these different influences. And sometimes people confuse a young country for having no culture. And when I explain, okay, the 4th of July, or I explain, if you were to ask a person, anybody who hasn't been in the military or, police, if you ask them about a 21 gun salute, they wouldn't even know why we do that, right? They just think, oh, Americans love guns, right? So it does, I know a lot of people who are bilingual but are completely clueless about culture in many countries. So, I'm pretty fluent in Japanese, but a lot of times I'm still ignorant or illiterate when it comes to culture. and
Yeah.
and you get thrown into a situation like a funeral or a wedding and you're like, I don't even know what to do. So I always just, and I learned this because I grew up in a big family with 5 kids, and you would just reach in the middle of the table, grab a roll, and like you would use your fork like this, and just there was no emphasis. My parents are awesome people, but there was no emphasis on like continental manners or how to use a knife and fork and stuff. So I would watch other people, and I got used to this. Okay, I'm from a small town. I don't have big city manners. So I learned how to just be quiet and watch other people and just copy them. So coming to Japan, I thought, I know nothing about the people, the culture. I don't know how to behave here, how to get along. One skill I think was just to observe.
It's something you need to hold with you while you're here. And it's something that that's another element of culture shock. I think when I go back to the United States is that people are more active and engaged in their own shit. They're in your face.
Hmm.
They've got motives and they're very clear about them,
Hmm.
and they've got
Oh yeah.
expectations and they want it now. Whereas in Japan, you set your shit aside and you kind of wait and observe and see what people are doing around you before you act. I definitely prefer the latter after living here so long, but it might be just a personal preference. Going back to what you said about language, though, I also heard this is years ago, probably when I first started studying Japanese, that, in the Oxford English dictionary, there's like a million words, but in Japanese dictionaries, there's only like 40,000. And I was just wondering right now if that's actually correct and true, because I've held on to that for a long time. And I just did some research right now, and it looks like there's about 500,000 to a million words in the Japanese language, and there's about 600,000 to a million in the English. Some people have said that there's slightly more words in English because English is it has a more varied vocabulary due to being like a global language.
Yeah.
It incorporates languages almost like an empire does from abroad.
Hmm.
So sushi,
Sure.
sashimi,
Hmm.
samurai, these are all Japanese words that got pulled into English. Of course, Japanese does the same thing, but it tends to be sort of, certainly it came later, right? The sort of
Hmm.
incorporation of Gairaigo came later, but
Hmm.
also it tends to be more scientific. Whereas I suppose
Hmm.
maybe TikTok is driving that differently nowadays. But
Very
but the average
scientific. Yeah.
person, yeah, but the
Hmm.
average person only knows between 20,000 to 35,000 words. So
Hmm.
if Japanese does have a bare minimum of 500,000 words, but
Hmm.
it's been thought to have maybe possibly a million as well.
Hmm.
Uh, what it doesn't really matter because you're never going to know all
Yeah.
those words, even if
Yep.
you are an adept linguist and you've studied the language
Hmm.
and your whole mission in life is just to master new words.
Hmm.
What are you grabbing? Maybe
Yeah.
35,000, 40,000 words at most. So
Also the
yeah,
ROI. I mean, unless you're a doctor and you need to know all this specialized vocabulary, right? What's the real benefit in me knowing all the organs in the body in Japanese? Unless I have appendicitis, then I hope I
right.
know. But yeah, there's so I did a video on, what is fluency, and my research is pretty minimum because I wanted to get the video out, and I found, yeah, that 500,000 according to the Nihon Daikoku goji 10, something like that. Probably got that wrong, but is 500,000 and up. A college educated person knows 20,000 words. But the good thing for us is to be conversant in Japanese, you only need about 2,000. So, and that's like, train station, sushi, which a lot of these words we already know, right? Bento, you know, I'm late for work, or I'm in a hurry, or I'm hungry. Like, you only need about 2,000 words. And I think most people, most people can do that.
Oh
And,
yeah, you could do
and
that in
great,
like less
great thing
than
about
6 months.
Japanese, yeah, your grammar doesn't even have to be perfect in Japanese, right? You can skip the particles. Like you could say
Yeah, a lot of
instead
people
of
don't know that
mus,
you can just strip particles out for the
yeah,
most
yeah,
part. Japanese people do
mizu
as well.
wo nomu. You can just say mizu nomu kyo ginko iku, right? You don't have
Yeah,
to get it perfect, and you can even mix it up. Like, oh, kyo atsui ne ore wa, and it's like I just completely mix up the grammar, So and that's okay, right? So yeah, learning language as an adult is really fun. it's it's I think, and I'm trying to work through this concept because I'm working on a video on, I did the two-part series of should I move to Japan, and then the answer was yes or no, right? So I did two videos and they both did pretty well. My next video is going to be, are you right for Japan? And I'm trying to think of the traits of a
interesting.
person, and maybe you can help me brainstorm this here, is like the traits of a person who does well in Japan. And I think like flexibility,
That
I
was the
think
first word
open
that came to my
mindedness,
mind. Yeah,
yeah,
patience.
patience, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, getting
um,
along.
selflessness.
Mm, yes.
Take your selfishness and check it at the baggage counter. Get rid of that. Just going back to what you said about particles, though, the other day I just watched a video by Kaname Naito. I don't know if you've seen his channel, Kaname. He just talks about Japanese for the most part, and I catch his videos occasionally. He had a video called "How to Use Day When Ordering Things," and he also broke it down. He's like, "Look, we don't. A lot of times we don't even use particles. So if you're like, natto ga suki desu ka, you could just say natto suki desu ka or natto te suki desu ka. Natto. There's other ways of doing it, but you could just pull those out entirely. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Americans have as much trouble with trying out and testing language that they've learned as Japanese people do. Japanese people, they're so afraid of making a mistake or being misunderstood that they really want to have it dialed in perfect before they communicate in many cases. And I'm sure teachers are constantly saying, just use it, just try to use it. Americans tend to just jump right in there and use stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well,
probably not so much of a problem for us.
yeah, not really. So, a friend of mine went to the States for a homestay program during high school years ago. And he said, like, what was so funny is the teacher would answer a question and all the kids would put their hand up. And the teacher would call on somebody and they didn't know the answer, but they still put their hand up. They wanted it. And I think so in my school, before everything was like, so many points as an A, so many points as a B, we got a participation grade.
Hmm.
And I just remember this as I'm talking to you. So participation, engagement was part of your grade. I don't think they have that in Japan. So big
Attendance.
cultural difference there.
Attendance is huge here. I know it's big in the US as well, but like
Mm.
completing a year without a single absence is like
Mm.
chef's kiss. Your teacher's like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, you
Yeah.
showed up, motherfucker. Even if you just
Yep.
sat at your desk the whole year and didn't say a
Yep.
goddamn word.
Yep. Well, that's just like
So
work too, right?
yeah.
You put in the hours, you stayed until the lights went off, you stayed to the last train, you're a contributor.
Yeah. Yeah. Showing up on time as well is absolutely huge here. So yeah. If so, I guess that could actually be part of one of the things on your list. It's so common for I'm just going to use America as an example. I can't really
Mm-hmm.
speak for British
Sure,
people or
sure.
anybody else on the planet, but I feel like it's so common for Americans to either cancel at the last minute, change plans at the last minute, show up late, not
Mm-hmm.
be prepared
Mm-hmm.
for what's happening.
Yep.
Um, and there's a casualness about it, maybe not be dressed appropriately for the event.
Mm.
I'm doing that today. I am that American
I'm in a
today.
t-shirt. It's
Apologies.
freaking hot. So
So, I could have sent you the link to this call a little bit early. My apologies for that. I was in the pool as
not
I
at all.
showed you.
No.
That's how I was I was in the gym and it was just so hot and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go into the pool. So I went to the pool, got out sopping wet, lifted some weights, went back into the pool and just rinsed and repeated that before this call today. That's why
Living
I
the
was late in
dream.
getting you the link. But I was still 20 minutes prior to today's plan. So I showed up. I was on time.
It's great.
My point is though that like people who have trouble with that, who have difficulty being on time, being prepared, and showing up when there's an expectation that you're going to be there, probably not the country for you. You will be judged severely if you renege on something or dotakeng. I mean, I realize Japanese people suddenly have to cancel things because of medical emergencies or family emergencies or
Sure.
things like that. It is a real thing, but it's so much more important, I think, to stick with a plan and show up here than it is, for example, in the
Mm.
U.S.
Yeah, yeah. The only exception now we're talking about business here, and business and Japanese family things like that. The major exception, and I have a couple single friends. The major exception is dating. And so when you meet somebody and you say, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee, let's grab a drink sometime, you would get their line, and then you would follow up and say, hey, about that drink, let's do that Friday. Um, my single friends say that like 90% of the time they have an amazing first conversation and then they get ghosted immediately or blocked. So she'd be like, "Oh, wow, you're in IT? Wow, I bet you make a lot of money. Oh, you're so interesting. You're so handsome. Oh, you're from California. Wow, I love California. Yeah, I'd love to go out. Here's my line." And she takes off, and you send a message, and it goes unopened for weeks. So you could, and I don't even know how that works. Like, you could have been blocked the second she left the coffee shop. You could get blocked. And then a lot of times is like, "Oh, yeah, I can't wait to go out." This just happened to a friend of mine. This just happened. He had been going to his favorite coffee shop and he thought, well, I don't want to ruin this, but the girl behind the counter is kind of cute. So, but this is my favorite coffee shop. Should I ask her out? Finally, he's like, screw it. I'm going to ask her out. So he asked her out and he's, found like what kind of food she likes. Do you like Chinese? Do you like pizza? Blah, blah, blah. He finds the perfect restaurant. It's, kind of close to her coffee shop where she works. And okay, we're going to meet. What time do you get off that day? I get off at 5 o'clock. He goes to the restaurant, the coffee shop, about 5 minutes before she gets off, grabs a coffee, sits down. She doesn't come out. But they've made this date for 5 o'clock today, right? And she doesn't come out. And so he's kind of like waiting around, like, what's happening? And it's a pretty big place. It's not like a small counter, It's a pretty big place. It's like, did she go out the back? Like, what happened? And so he gets up and looks around, and she's standing outside. So I guess she had gone around the back, or whatever. She's standing outside, and motioning for him to come out. And so he goes outside. He takes care of his cup, walks outside, and she says, "I got to tell you something. I have a boyfriend." And he was like,
Whoopsies.
"Why did you agree to go out with me? Like what?" So yeah, what you're saying about punctuality and all that stuff and is really really awesome in Japan. Like with business meetings, I find that people are ready, they're prepared, you
Hmm.
know, um, they're present. We were also going to talk about another thing. So I live in Tokyo, you live in the country. Now I did a homestay in at Shinshu Daigaku
Okay.
for like a summer. Awesome family. The school was awesome. They had amazing apples, apple pie and stuff. Um,
Mm.
and the weather was
Did you say
beautiful.
Shinchi or Shinshu?
Shinshu,
Out
Shinshu
here in
Daigaku.
Nagano.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. And I loved it. Um, People were
Which
great.
particular town were you in? Can I ask?
It was Nagano,
Naganoshi.
Naganoshi in Nagano City. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you were in the city, bro, from where I stand.
I was. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Although that is Inaka compared to
it is.
Tokyo,
Yeah,
that would still be
it is. Yeah.
considered Inaka, but that's a That's a full
Yeah.
blown city, with a
Yeah,
decent
yeah.
sized
It's a
population.
big city. But we got to explore around. We took a bus tour around and went to, just different places and my homestay, I guess you would call them parents, whatever, the homestay family had a car, so we would go see stuff and
How long were
they
you
didn't
there?
know I was there for a summer.
A summer.
Or
A
more
month.
like
Yeah.
a month, I want to say, yeah.
A
So not
month.
the whole summer,
Yeah.
but beautiful beautiful place, great people, great food. Um but it is very different from Tokyo, even Nagano City. And I've never lived
Yeah.
in the countryside in Japan. Like I visited my in-laws in Shizuoka, and it's a small town. Uh, they had a 7-Eleven, but it closed down. And there's the local soba place. There's the local hot springs, the local onsen. But
Yeah. If you don't have a 7-Eleven, wow.
yeah, that's countryside. But it's funny because it's a resort town, really beautiful. Shimoda's really beautiful, but it's also it feels really remote because it's really small. The services aren't as good. Like one time I was trying to send my in-laws flowers and nobody delivered out there. And I'm used to Tokyo where you get on Amazon and the next day things just show up at the door, right?
You have everything. You're in the biggest metropolis of the
Yeah.
world. There's like nothing
It's
that you can't get.
yeah. So
It's
so
insane.
for you now, I forget where you grew up. Was it Seattle?
No, I grew up on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon,
Portland.
far
Okay.
outskirts, like what we would
My
call a
bad. Yeah.
bed town. I guess nobody uses that in English, but
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
suburb of Portland City called Gladstone. And,
Okay.
you know, it was just, how can I put it? It was just idyllic. It was,
Mm,
3 months of summer. It just seemed endless. You'd ride around with BMX bikes, skateboards.
mm.
Being a kid in the 80s and 90s in suburban America was actually pretty dope.
Oh,
I didn't know
it was the
what all the
best.
problems
Yeah.
were. Yeah, it
Mm,
was.
yeah.
So yeah, I think coming out here was a bit of a shock. I mean, where I grew up wasn't New York or anything. Obviously, growing up in Oregon it's pretty rural, I would say.
Yeah.
Even Portland City is not much compared to any of the other cities in America, and certainly today it's got some interesting problems. But for me, the cultural shock that I experienced coming to Tokyo initially was just how big and crazy the
Mm,
city is, and trying to wrap my head around it. Obviously, there were linguistic barriers, so
sure.
just studying my ass off, studying the language. I studied all day. I'd wake up, I'd go to bed at night, writing out vocabulary sheets and practicing before I went to sleep. Wake up in the morning and practice those on the train or on the bus or whatever, whatever means of commute I was taking that day. Just studying all the damn time and trying to take it all in and just feeling absolutely flabbergasted. Coming out here to the countryside, it was slow as it's the people live at a different speed out here.
Yeah.
I felt like people were kind of stuck in a 60s mentality, maybe even a 50s mentality.
Mm,
I did tend to hang out with a lot of older people, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so, it just felt different. It hit completely different. Values are different, even compared to Tokyo. I feel like
mm.
there was that recent video by, is it Takashi, the YouTuber, who's like, what do you think about cheating? And all these young Japanese girls are
Oh yeah.
like, oh, it's fine. It's fine as long as they don't love the girl. If it's with a prostitute, not a big deal. Out here, I don't think you'd get the same reaction. I think certainly you wouldn't get that reaction from my wife. When we were younger, she once threatened to Lorena Bob at me if I ever.
I've
She,
heard that. Yeah, I've heard that from a couple guys. Yeah.
so I don't know if she was joking or not, but I don't want to test my wife. She's a farmer's daughter. She's got strong hands.
The thing is though, it's like having the um weapons of mass destruction. It's just the threat that it's there
Yeah,
is enough,
yeah.
right? But also like I
Hearing
wouldn't
that
do that to my
once.
yeah, and I wouldn't do that to myself, because I got to live with myself. So
When I was younger, I used to dream of polygamy. I think it was like, wow, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if society was set up so that men could have multiple wives? It was very naive. idea. After being married 15 years now, I'm surprised that how can I put it, that I've survived this long, like in a marriage, with that mindset. I've grown up as a human being. I feel
Yeah.
like now, one deep relationship is certainly enough for me, and I wouldn't
Mm.
even want more. I don't want another person threatening to cut off my balls or my dick, certainly. So, I
Also,
mean,
it just takes so much time to get to know somebody. Like you think, okay, the second date, you know enough about them. Like, okay, I'm gonna go in for the first
yeah,
kiss, and like, oh, we've been together a couple months, and like, and then
yeah,
after 6 months, like she's staying over, and then or whatever. And okay, I think I should pop the question. And 10 years later, you're still learning stuff. It's like, well, I didn't know that,
yeah,
or I didn't know you thought like that, or people change too. It's like something you
sure,
said on the first date. 5 years later, she's like, well, I think this. You're like, wait a second. 5 years ago, you didn't think that. And I, it's funny because I can some ways be very generous with myself. Like I can change, but you can't.
mm,
So, because
yeah, yeah,
I want the stability. I want predictability, right? But
yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, Pe- people change.
I wouldn't want to hurt, even if I still had the desire and I don't to have something like polygamy, I wouldn't want to hurt my wife. So for me,
Mm.
certainly being in this marriage, and being monogamous, I think at first I was like, wow, there's so many beautiful people out there. Why get married? But I love my relationship with my wife. She's an
Mm.
amazing woman. I'm in awe of her. She's so much of a better person than I am that I feel like I'm constantly trying to live up to the example that she sets for me, which is kind of cool. I'm definitely funnier than her, but so I
Would
do
she
bring
say?
something to the table.
Would she
She
agree?
doesn't think so. I don't think she would agree with that. But
There's a there are a couple great memes of the gaijin husband who's
we're such
like
idiots. We're such
funny,
idiots, sticking our foot in our
but
mouth all the time.
well, the Japanese wife with the gaijin husband who like pops off with a dad joke, you know, and she's just like total deadpan, like, Was that one of your jokes?" Like, I don't get it.
I
And,
just
and then
rocked
she's
out one the other day, and my mother-in-law was like "Samui" and just walked away. Which, I guess in the West people don't do that, but when you tell a joke that's just so so
bad.
stupid, like a pun, it's such a bad
Mm-hmm.
pun that people will say, "I feel cold,"
Mm,
and generally want to
yep.
get away from you.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
it's
yeah,
funny because I came to this, and I'm working on this. This is like a working hypothesis or a work in progress. Is that I think the dad joke, the purpose is not to be funny. The purpose is to be so bad that you make everybody groan. And I think
yeah, yeah. Dads
I
don't
think
give
I
a
might have said this
shit about
before.
anything, and so
Yeah.
if I can get that reaction from my mother-in-law, I feel like
Hmm.
I've accomplished something for the
Yeah.
day.
It's an art form. It's a
It
damn art
is.
form. Yeah.
Yeah.
Making
So
a bad
I
joke with a
don't.
straight
Yeah, I'm
face.
known for that for sure. for the
It's great. It's
for the
great.
dad jokes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I got some feedback. I had a video where I discussed dad jokes. Like it's like a throwaway line. And somebody and you can always tell when somebody's overseas who has taken a Japanese class because he chimed in the comments and said that dad jokes and I think they had misunderstood. A dad joke in this person's mind was supposed to be like scandalously dirty. I was like, wait, that's not all dad jokes. Like the dad joke is supposed to be bad, and that they had misunderstood that a dad joke was supposed to be dirty. And I was like, no, it's not really. It's not necessarily. So,
Oyaji gags, as they're called in
mm-hmm.
Japanese, can be really basic. Like some of the first ones that I learned were futonga futonda. The futon has flown away. It's like that is the classic Oyaji gag.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean it's just a play on words. Really, it doesn't have any. Usually, doesn't have to have anything related to sexual content. So yeah, I'm constantly rocking those out. I've never heard my mother-in-law say I'm cold and walk away before, so I felt like I reached a new level with the Oyaji gag a little earlier this week.
Nice, nice, nice. So, as far as like living out in the country now, you live with your in-laws, right? And
Yeah, we
three
were four
generation
generations until
four.
the great grandmother passed away last year,
Wow.
and we just had Obon. So obviously we're putting out all the implements and praying and the food for the spirits to come, and this was kind of a big one. It was the first Obon after she passed away. Um,
Mm.
and I we have a Butsudan in our house, and I noticed my father-in-law tacked the last. Um, you know how like in the new year you'll write a kanji, like the kanji of the year for you, kakizome or whatever it's called. The last kanji that she wrote was Sora, which and he tacked it up above the kamidan in our house. And I was looking at that the other day, and it also has like a Buddhist connotation of emptiness, and it just kind of I just had like a
It does.
in it,
Soda.
yeah,
So soda, the kanji for soda is, or the English word is sky, but it also means empty. Like it can be soda or kara, like karate, empty hand, right? I'll have
yeah.
to put that up on the
So
screen. Yeah.
I to this day I wonder if she knew that that was her last kakizome, and I wonder if she knew or intended for the sort of the Buddhist meaning of emptiness, because in Buddhism, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. People generally have a sense of when it's about time for them to go. She was
Yep.
99 and was getting
Mm-hmm.
very weak. She just visited our house after because we started having to put her into like day service for
Mm-hmm.
for bathing and things like that, and so she was kind of half institutionalized the last year of her life, and then she would come to the house, but we brought her back for New Year's, and she wrote that. And I didn't think of anything of it at the time. I was like, oh, Sora. That's it's like an Ichinensei, maybe Ninensei, probably Ichinensei kanji. And I was thinking that's such a weird kanji to select for your New Year kanji. And then she passed away. And then I saw it tacked over the altar, and I'm like, holy shit, I don't think it was Sora. I think it was, emptiness.
Empty. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, I don't know why I went
Wow.
off on this tangent. You
No,
asked me a
no,
question,
no.
and I just
Yeah,
went.
we're talking about the four generation home up until the time
Sorry.
the great
Yes, back
grandmother
to the
passed away.
question.
Yeah,
We
so
did have four generations, and again about raising your children. That definitely helped out with Japanese language acquisition, because if it's
mm,
just a nuclear family with two parents, and you're trying to really push hard on one language, like English in my case, um, I think then Japanese will suffer for the first 5 years. And when they go into elementary school or they become a first grader in school, there might be a little bit of a speed bump there where they're like, like, oh shit, a bit of a shock for them because they're not quite on par with their peers. Um, in our case, we had my mother, sorry, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my great great grandmother, my wife's great grandmother, um, and my wife, all of them speaking Japanese on a day-to-day
mm,
basis. So I felt like my kids had a really strong home environment for Japanese. It was
mm,
getting the English environments that was actually difficult.
hmm Now, in
Yeah.
living in the country, when I visit, I feel like I'm living in a fishbowl because everybody knows my in-laws. And
Yeah.
when I'm in the country, I feel like I'm in a fishbowl. Like I went to get a water at the local store, and I get back, and my mother-in-law says, like, "Oh, did you visit the, such and such store?" And I was like, "How do you know?" She's like, "Oh yeah, my friend told me." And I was like, "Well, I'm glad I didn't buy like a couple flasks of whiskey or something like that." And
They'll look in
and
your basket too when you're shopping. They'll be like, what do you, I mean, everybody wants to know
yeah,
everything about
yeah.
everybody. Whereas
And
in the
I'm a
city,
very
nobody cares about
yeah.
anybody or wants to know anything about
I'm
anybody.
I'm just so used to people being so aloof in Tokyo and so disconnected in a nice way. Like there's that personal space and stuff where
Yeah.
I remarked before where like sometimes, especially as a foreigner, people, they think, oh, I can't speak English, so I'll just go to the other side of the store so I don't have to deal with the foreigner. I get a wide berth. Um, sometimes the cashier, like I'll look at the cashier and say thank you. Sometimes they're kind of like, they're not sure whether to make eye contact or not. So I
Yeah.
kind of like that distance in Tokyo. But when
Yeah.
I'm in the country, especially since I have family there, I feel like people are like track, trace, and database everything I do. You know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and
They are. They're
how do you
very curious about what you're doing.
deal with that?
These days, now that I've been here 25 years or whatever it is, and I was a quasi celebrity while I was an English teacher slash Sister City Friendship Ambassador. Everybody knew who I was. I had a wide face, as they say, and everywhere I went, people were like, Jeff Sensei, Jeff Sensei. I haven't been teaching for 7 years, but I still will get occasionally somebody run up to me and be like, Jeff Sensei? And I'm like, wow. So, one of the things that I do is I try not to go to my local grocery store.
Mm.
I'll drive 45 minutes to go to a grocery store rather than go to my grocery store. That's not to say that I avoid it 100% of the time. I will go there. But I feel like, especially the first 3 years after I kind of retired from being a member of the school, and I retired from being a member of the Sister City Friendship Ambassador, and also working in the Yakuba with those people. For the 3 or 4 years after that, I would go to the grocery store and I'd be bowing for like 20 minutes, like, oh, domo, hisashiburi desu. And then you have to go in this long talk, like, Joshi do desu ka? Saikin shigoto do desu ka? And they're asking you questions about your life. They want to know about your kids. They're like, oh, how old is Sakura-chan? How old is Marty-chan? How are they doing in school? And you have these conversations over and over and over again with various individuals in the grocery store. It's very hard to get your grocery shopping done. And they're looking in your basket and they're like, what's for dinner tonight? And it's all out there. It is all out there. A lot of those interactions were heartwarming. It's great that people care about you. It's great that they want to talk to you. It's also a lot to stack on a trip to the grocery store. So I started... as I get older and I feel more, what's the word, private, I think, as I get older and enjoying privacy, I'll just avoid a lot of that. Now, being out of that sort of the local society game now for 7 years, I feel like less and less people are really concerned with me for the most part. But yeah, like I'll go to my son's baseball game and somebody will want to accost me and have the most intimate conversation for 20 minutes. A former student of mine from like 20 years ago, she ended up going to Thailand, coming back. She's married and got kids, and our kids are on the same baseball team, and she wants to talk to me for like 20, 30 minutes. I'm just trying to watch baseball. It's friendly. It's great. It's just, it's a lot. So, I do what Japanese people do. I hide away. They're very good at it too.
Yeah.
So I just learned from the masters, keep it minimal.
Yep.
Avoid hot spots. Wear a hat. Put a mask on.
Yeah.
Bow. Throw your hand up and run away.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a friend about this the other day. Is like sometimes Japanese people give really short answers, and Western, especially somebody like me, and this is one reason I love podcasting, is somebody can ask me one question, I can go for 10 minutes.
Sure.
Right? And so...
It's probably your only chance to go for 10 minutes question is podcasting.
Yeah. And so, this is my outlet. But...
Exactly. Yeah.
But I talked to this Japanese friend, they said the conclusion was you don't want to tell people too much.
I've learned that because I'll say something and I'll go back and I'll talk to my wife. And I'll be like, oh, I met so-and-so and they asked me this and I said this. And she's like, why did you say that to them? And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize it was a secret.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
She wants to keep it tight to the vest, man. She doesn't want too many details out.
Well, see, I had this too. So I had moved in with my girlfriend at the time, and we were both going to the same gym. And the instructor, since I'm an attorney, he just expected, oh, this guy must have money. He must have a massive apartment and 10-car garage and stuff. And he kept recommending things. And finally I just said, dude, I want to get all this stuff that you're recommending, like this thing to roll on, And finally I just said, look, we don't have...
Foam roller?
Yeah, foam roller. Yeah,
what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You don't have to be rich to get a foam roller, bro.
No. But here's what I said. He expected us to have a massive home. And finally, I said, "Look, I can't buy all this
Yeah.
stuff you're recommending because I don't have
Oh,
any
you don't
place
have
to put
room.
it.
You don't have space
I
in
don't have the
your
place to
apartment.
put it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was horrified. I was like,
Oh,
"Yeah, my
yeah.
girlfriend, yeah." And I was
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
"But it's true. Like, so what?" Like, and also, I don't
Yeah.
want to buy something I'm going to use twice and then it's just collect dust in the corner, right? But she was
I
like, "No, you
literally
can't."
have a foam roller collecting dust out
Yeah.
in my one of my million sheds.
She was
So,
horrified. She was furious. Like, how dare you tell him we have a small apartment? You know,
sure,
you're a
sure.
lawyer. You're
Yeah.
supposed to have a massive home. I'm like, whatever, you know. But
Yeah.
if I take that suggestion, then he's going to have another thing. Like, and he wasn't trying to sell me anything. He's like, go to Amazon and get this, or go to the
Yeah.
store and get this. It was just like every time I was there, he's like, oh, here's a new thing you need to get. I'm like, finally, I just said, look, dude, I don't have any place to put it.
Whether you're rich or not, I think most people in Tokyo put a premium on space because they tend not to have a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is it,
Yeah,
two
yeah.
LDK or what is the thing that everybody says about their, they have really
Mm-hmm.
small living
Yeah,
quarters in Japan, even,
really
even rich
small.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, really small apartments. I talked to a Japanese coworker who was always buying souvenirs, which is, I mean, is a thing, like the souvenir
Hmm.
culture, the gift giving culture. And one day we were sitting at the, like, having a coffee in the break room or something. She said, I really love getting stuff for other people. I was like, really? She said, yeah, because I want to minimize my life. So I get stuff for them when I travel. So I don't have
Mm.
to store it at home. So if I see something I really like, and if that lines up with something that my friend would like, I'll get it. Because I want to buy it, but I don't want it at home.
Mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Most omiyage is just like crackers and shit, though, like
Yeah.
consumables, some kind of a
Mm-hmm.
food item. You don't see too many objects that you'd like put
No.
in your house or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have that's one thing about living in the countryside is that we have the opposite problem, which is I have more land than I can manage, and it's
Mm.
would love to get rid of some of it, but my father-in-law doesn't want to. So I will be cutting grass for the rest of my life until I die.
Well, that's the thing. I'm studying real estate law in Japan, and the whole idea of disposing of farmland is very difficult.
I mean,
You
I
can't.
wanted to put like a little cabin on some of our land. It has a great view of Mount Asama. I'm like, this would be a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful spot. It's surrounded by trees, and my wife's like, this is agricultural land, bro. You're
Mm-hmm.
not putting shit up here.
Yep.
I mean, you might
Zoning.
be able to go to the Yakuba,
Mm-hmm.
do a shit ton of paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
grease some wheels. I don't know what it costs. I don't know how
Yep.
hard it is, but you might be able to convert it
Mm-hmm.
to, property that you can build on.
Mm-hmm.
But agricultural land in the countryside of Japan is highly
Yep.
protected.
It's protected. Yep. Big time. Big time.
You own
It's
it,
like
but you
a,
don't.
yeah. Well, it's not just a matter of like food security, but national security. You
Sure.
know, to be able
Yeah.
to feed yourself. So if all else fails, Japan will have rice.
Speaking of
Right.
national security,
Hmm.
speaking of food security,
Yeah.
what's going on with rice in Tokyo? We still have it on the shelves out here,
It's a,
bro. Are you guys able to
I
purchase rice?
think,
Because I heard all the gaijin, all the inbound tourists
yep,
are eating
are
up all the
gobbling up the
goddamn
rice.
rice, man. What's
Yep.
going on?
Well, 0.5% of the rice consumed in Japan is consumed by visitors, by tourists. So, so when the news, and there's this funny thing I should explain for, people who haven't heard me explain this 100 times. There's this funny game that they play on Japanese media where anytime something goes wrong, you got to find a way to blame foreigners,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Crime is up. So there was every once in a while you'll see a murder in Japan or something, and they're like, we have to find a foreign connection.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
must be. It can't be a Japanese person hurt another Japanese person in Japan. So there was, by the way, decades ago, some Japanese couple was, what can I say on YouTube, was unalived in Hawaii.
What did you say? Unalived?
Unalived. That comes from video games
Unalived.
because you can't use the M word on some social media. So,
Oh,
no, a
okay.
Japanese couple met their end in Hawaii one time, and the Japanese news was like, "Look how dangerous America is. You know, you go there, you're going to get killed. It
It
was a
is dangerous, but you're not likely to get killed while you're visiting.
it was a mafia hit.
Oh, wow.
A Japanese hitman followed them to Hawaii,
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. And it was still
offed
blamed
them.
on, yeah.
Yeah, a Japanese hitman followed them to Hawaii, offed them, came back to Japan before
I
you know
think
they
they say
couldn't.
isekai'd now. He isekai'd them.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Put him into the next world. Well, he unalived them and then went back to Japan. And how do
Yeah.
you prosecute this, right? So the
Right.
American police, the the perp has already left the country. The Japanese
Yeah.
police like didn't happen here, so not our problem.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was a Japanese mafia hit on a Japanese couple in Hawaii, but the news
Wild.
went on for like 6 months about how if you're a tourist in America, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And once it came out, it was a Japanese hitman. Crickets. So, but there's always a way to find. You got to find a way to blame foreigners. So there's supposedly a rice shortage in Japan, um,
Yep.
and it's getting blamed on foreigners on inbound tourism.
Yeah, I'm looking at the graphic right here. I saved it on my iPad, and it's apparently inbound tourists are consuming 2.3 times the amount of rice than like the average from previous years. Now, I don't know
Okay.
if they're comparing it to like the last few years because there was the pandemic, but in any event, they're like, okay, so we've got 1 year, 31,000 tons of rice are being consumed by inbound tourists. And I'm like, where the hell do they get this number from? How is this data being compiled? Like, who's wrangling this data?
No
Is
idea.
every time an inbound tourist putting a fork to their plate, is somebody like, got one of those little things? You see the guy on the side of the
Yeah.
road, like clicking away. He's like, that's a bite. Like, how do
Hmm.
you, where does this stat even
Yeah.
come
You
from?
know, I just think they just count the number of tourists who come to Japan and just assign them a
Yeah. And then they
number.
do exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of
So
people who don't eat rice. I don't eat rice. I do keto.
a lot of tourists, I feel, are not drawn to rice when they come to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people just have problems with sushi. Now I know
Yeah.
that that's going away for the most part. More and more people are starting to enjoy sushi, but like I can't tell you how many foreigners I've met in Japan that are like, yeah, I don't eat the seafood and I'm not really big on the rice. They love the ramen though,
Hmm. Yeah.
and ramen is a wheat noodle.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the stat even adds up,
I don't
but
know.
people are
We
absolutely panicked right now, and because everybody is saying that inbound tourism is the devil, they're like, oh, well, the rice shortage is clearly
Yep.
linked to
Clearly.
all these devils.
Yeah. Just like the STDs. So in the 90s when AIDS became a thing, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's people going overseas.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
Or
guys. It
or
was
going to the Filipino Fuzoku or whatever. Well, it's because they're going to
Soapland or something. Yeah.
Fuzoku soaplands run by or I don't know
Or
if
they're
they're run
visiting
by foreigners.
foreigners.
They're run by
Yeah.
the yaks for the most part, but
Hmm.
but the
Yep.
prostitutes themselves are from
Are
foreign
foreigners.
countries, and so that was
Yeah, yeah. So that's
yeah,
the only way
yeah,
you can get a disease in Japan is from a foreigner. So um, I
yeah.
can't imagine what it must have been to be like to be single then, because you go into a club and people are like, oh, he's got a disease. Like, I don't know. So yeah, any problem that hits the news, there's got to be a way to blame a foreigner. So the rice shortage,
Which so it's
and
insane that guys like you and I actually have significant others. Where there's
right,
this massive tsunami of anti-foreign propaganda behind us, but still people come over here and they do
hmm
well for themselves. So clearly it's not working as well as they'd hoped.
no, and it's because I ignore it. I ignore it. Like this is one of the reasons I
Me too.
don't watch TV. So if you remember this, somebody posted this on X a couple years ago, where um, the way that people speak English was actually spreading the pandemic,
Oh yeah, this
and
is
they
a
put a
pan. Yeah,
they put a handkerchief in front of somebody's face, and they spoke Japanese, and it didn't move.
but then
And
they
they put
did
a
this is a
handkerchief,
pan. This is a pan.
and they overemphasized it, over enunciated it, And this guy was
Yeah.
like spitting out of his mouth and like, see, that's why foreigners get this and Japanese don't. And it's always, I find I listened to an audiobook on the Japanese language and I thought, I'm going to learn, etymology. I'm going to learn the history. I'm going to learn, you know, this deep, rich history of the Japanese language. And it's an
Yeah.
audiobook, but the first paragraph, he started making comparisons between English and Japanese.
Mm.
And by the way, getting everything wrong. The author got everything wrong. He said, in America, there's only one way to say rain. In
Yeah.
Japanese, we have a dozen ways to say rain because we get more rain. But in American English, you have rain. I was like, dude, you don't understand a damn thing. He said the same thing about like so many different things, trying to
Yeah.
make all these comparisons. And they always say this funny thing is like, well, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but Japan has this. America only has this.
Right.
And it's always this backhanded, passive aggressive comparison. And it's, it's kind of funny because people ask me when you say stuff like that, like, why do you stay in Japan? No, no. This is why I don't watch TV because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
garbage, first
Yeah.
of all. And second of all, you see
You can
this stupid
occasionally get it in
propaganda.
conversation though too. You can tell when people have an inferiority complex around foreigners, but it often
Hmm.
comes off as a superiority complex. People are
Yep.
obsessed with proving that Japan is better than
Hmm.
Gaikoku because they actually have an inferiority complex. I feel like
Mm.
as a nation, everything is on a bell curve. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
certainly Americans experience the same sorts of feelings and emotions about their country.
Sure, sure.
We're number one in the world. We're the best. We also
Hmm.
suck, and you kind of have this
Freedom.
tension inside of yourself. But some people really internalize that a lot, and you can pick up on it
Mm.
very quickly when you're talking with somebody because that is all they want to talk about.
Yep.
All they want to do is compare Japan to the West and prove that Japan
Mm.
is better. Not the kind of people that I like to hang out with. Certainly not the majority
Yeah.
of people that you're going to meet in Japan, but you do get a trickle of that in the media as well. But to bring it back to what
Mm.
we were talking about, hafus.
Yeah.
I have to wonder though, how does this all link together? I recently read that 30 to 40% of all runway models in Japan identify as hafu, and then if you look at the media,
Mm.
a lot of the people on TV nowadays. I'm sure you could rattle off a few names, but the ones
Hmm.
that come to my mind are Becky.
Yeah, Becky.
Although I guess we haven't seen too much of her since
I think she had a scandal, right?
she did have a scandal. But who's the half Iranian or half Indian one? I forget her name.
I don't know because I don't watch TV.
You don't watch TV. I don't know
Hmm.
why I'm blinking on her name right now. But in any event, if you do watch TV, you'll see
Hmm.
that there is an inordinate amount of hafu appearing on TV. So
Mm.
there's a popularity. There's this sense in which hafu are very popular in Japan right now.
Hmm.
But there's probably jealousy and some
Oh yeah.
backstabbing as well because
Hmm.
certainly if you're not a hafu, then that could create some attention for
Hmm.
you. So I have to wonder, how my kids are going to fare as they become
Yeah,
shakaijin, as they
yeah.
become adults and enter society.
Hmm. A friend of mine back in America, he has a Japanese wife, so he's Caucasian with a Japanese wife, so half Japanese kid. And then when we say hafu, that's the Japanese pronunciation of half. So in Japanese, if you're multi or biracial, they call you half. So half Japanese, right? I prefer to think of them as double. Two cultures, two languages, two parents from different places. So I always called my daughter a double. I never allowed people to call her a half. Because
That's pretty
it just
popular
sounds.
among
Yeah.
fathers of hafus. I've
Hmm.
noticed
Yeah.
recently. I've heard that from a number of people.
Yeah. I called her
Yeah,
double because she's doubly awesome. So, but the thing is, like, the thing about being half is I've lost my train of thought here.
I have to wonder if that term's going to go the way of the dogs. I mean, think about the terminology that existed before hafu. There was ainoko, a child of love, and that was used
Love
to refer
child.
to people. Yeah, love child. That was
Mm.
used to refer to people who had one parent who was non-Japanese, but it then developed a history of discrimination.
Hmm.
It became a derogatory term, and so then it
Mm.
became an NG term. I don't know if NG
Mm.
is standard English, but
NG, no good. Yeah.
no good, and so it was canceled. I guess that's what we would say in
Hmm.
English. And then there was konketsui. I'm not sure which one predates the other. Maybe konketsui or
Oh,
mixed blood children may
mixed.
have been before
Oh,
Ainoko, but
that one
also
is worse.
derogatory.
Mixed is worse than half, in my opinion, because mixed
Yeah. Well,
implies like I hate
that's
that term.
canceled. That's NG.
Yeah.
That term is no longer in. So, a lot of people will say that Japanese doesn't have cancel culture and that there is no such thing as PC in Japanese, but words do take on a derogatory nature do tend to be removed from the Japanese language. For
Hmm.
example, ura nippon, NHK said we're not going to use that term anymore because it's derogatory to refer to the countryside of Japan. The countryside of Japan isn't the backside of Japan. They're not backward. They're not behind the times or any. I mean, we are behind the times, but saying that out loud and saying that it's a bad thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a bad thing to have like a rural, rustic,
Yeah.
countryside
Kind of
vibe.
cool. Yeah.
So there are words that become NG or that become canceled in Japanese, and
Mm.
Uranippon is one of them. Konketsui is another. Ainoko is another. And I have to wonder if in the next decade or so, Hafu will also go the way of the dogs
Mm.
because I think 1 in 30 children in Japan now is being born to an interracial couple. So there's
Mm.
this sort of now it's interesting that the national census doesn't get into ethnicity in Japan at all. They do
Hmm.
not even care about that. So the national census just recognizes Japanese people. That's not quite true. I did a little bit of research. So back in 2008, Japan acknowledged Ainu. So now Japan,
Oh.
on the books anyway, has two cultures. There's
Mm.
the Ainu
Hmm.
and there's the Japanese. They don't recognize, for example, Ryukyuans, Okinawans. They don't recognize the Chinese, the Koreans, the Mongolians, the Orok, what I can't even pronounce some of these. But there's Southeast Asians
Hmm.
in Japan. There's people like us that live in Japan. Uh, None of these people make it into the census. There's either Japanese or Ainu. But
Oh.
the Hafu are subverting this. The whole idea
Mm.
of Japanese or
Hmm.
Yamato blooded Japanese, as they
Mm.
used to be called, I think it's going the way of the dogs.
Mm. Well, and we're doing our part. Contributing,
One
yeah.
diluted drop of blood at a time, my
That's
friend.
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is something to be said about like opposites attract, right? Because, you know, Japanese and Western culture are about as opposite as you can get.
Yeah.
But there's something about like an American and a Japanese in a relationship. There's some kind of something that's just I don't know. It just works, you know.
In general,
Hmm.
the more distant people are genetically, the more
Hmm.
robust their children tend to be.
That's what I'm
Uh,
trying to say.
Fewer incidents. I forget there's a term for it. I could look it up on AI right now, but I don't want to stomp away at the keyboard. But there's a robustness that comes with it. So you get fewer allergies.
Mm.
Obviously, some of the diseases that come from
Hmm.
inbreeding, for example,
Yeah,
those are
yeah.
much less likely when you get two people together that are distant on
Oh
the
yeah, the
tree of
genetic.
life,
Yeah.
as it
Hmm.
were. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I
So
was gonna say. Sorry, my buddy who had a Japanese wife and he's Caucasian. His son, when they lived in Japan, was a model for I want to say Gap or Mickey House or one of these clothing companies, and they would go into the mall and they would see his son's picture at the mall, and the ladies would come over and say, "Oh, can we get a picture with you? You look just like the model." This kid, half Japanese, and he's a good-looking kid, made so much money as a minor that he had already made enough money to pay for college by the time he was like 10.
oh wow,
Had his college fund
yeah.
by modeling, yeah. So that's how popular um, kids who are half Japanese can be.
They tend to do pretty well, but they also get backlash, which could
Yes.
derail them. And so there's increased incidence of bullying.
Yep.
I want to say 1 in 3 Hafu children tend to become futoko, or kids that don't go to school. We call it homeschooling in the US. It's a very
Mm.
troubling statistic. But dropping out of school, suicide, these are the sorts of things that are on the rise for Hafu in Japan. If you can kind of get through your teenage and young adult years and enter
Mm-hmm.
into society, as long as you don't fall into any black kikyo or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll probably do well. But I did uh, Google it while you were talking there. The
Mm-hmm.
concept of genetic robustness or the health benefits associated with mixed ethnicity in
Mm-hmm.
children is often referred to as hybrid vigor or
Mm.
heterosis. So they do have a sort of robustness about them. Like my
Mm.
eldest daughter just dominates in sports in our in our town, and I have to presume it's just this. She's got that
Sure,
robustness.
sure.
She's got that hybrid vigor. She outruns, outperforms
Mm.
everybody in her class. But she was also bullied at school. I'm not going to get into the details. It was
Mm-hmm.
pretty troubling, actually. But she ended up quitting school and becoming a Fotoko. So
Mm.
in her case, having, what can I put it? She's really good at physical
Mm-hmm.
things. So having
Mm-hmm.
a sort of native gift when it comes to speed, endurance, and other PE related type things didn't turn into her succeeding at school, unfortunately. But my
Mm-hmm.
other two kids
Mm-hmm.
are killing it and don't seem
Mm-hmm.
to be having any of the problems that she's having. So they're doing great academically and have a good network of friends and don't seem to be getting bullied. So it's very hit and miss.
Mm.
And it's interesting that in my own house, this statistic of 1 in 3 Hafu becoming Futoko actually panned out
Wow.
with the national
Yeah.
average
Mm-hmm.
perfectly. So
Mm-hmm.
it's tough raising Hafu because you will have these beautiful babies. All babies are beautiful, no matter what they are. Everybody. What do they call it? Oya no yokume. You've got this bias, this inherent bias as a parent that you're going to love your child and view it much better, more favorably than you view any other child on the planet. But you're going to produce beautiful babies, and they may or may not do well because of the fact that they are mixed ethnicity in Japan. That can either be a blessing or a curse, and it's hard to say exactly why or how. I mean, a lot of it. Think about your own work experience and your own personal history. Have you ever had a bad boss? All it takes is one toxic person to just fucking spoil the pool. So, yeah, you got to get lucky too. There's a luck factor there. But I would say if you are a parent of a hafu child in Japan, be vigilant. Always keep the communication channels open and stay on top of that on a day-to-day basis. Really drill in if they're showing mood issues, fluctuations in mood. It could be the fact that they're going through puberty, or it could be that they're getting bullied at school. So really be dialed in. I would say connect with the homeroom teacher. Try not to be a dick about it, because there's this whole concept of the monster parent in Japan, and you don't want to be that, because
Yeah.
then the teacher could start bullying your parent if you if you are too aggressive or pushy with the homeroom teacher at
Mm-hmm.
the school. That sucks too. So, but try to develop a good relationship with the teacher, because they do come to your house. Kate homon is a thing in Japan. So once a year, you have to sit down with a teacher for 15 minutes. You'll also go in and talk to the teachers occasionally, but definitely have a really good relationship with the teacher, and definitely track your child, their emotions, and dig into that,
Mm.
because Japanese people tend not to talk about things that trouble them. And if you're, from my perspective as an American, I would just assume that if, like me, if my kids had a problem, they would tell me about it. They would express it,
Yeah.
because I don't bottle shit up, and I culturally, I don't come from a country where people bottle shit up. They tend to vomit it out at you.
Yeah.
In fact, it's quite the opposite.
Yep.
Whereas in Japan, they might not tell you. It's perfectly acceptable to just bottle up any troubles that you're having. So understanding that your kids might be different from you when it comes to processing the emotions that they have because of things that are happening at school, and really being alert to that is critical, I would say.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I found it just talking to other parents that, you know, when an emergency happens, this is the same for an earthquake, a life crisis, a health crisis. When the emergency happens, it's too late. is you got to have that relationship to where they think I can talk to my dad, I can talk to my mom. It's the same thing with health. Like if I'm not going to the gym and I'm not tracking my health, and then one day I feel a pain, it's like I don't know if I feel the pain because I'm sick or because I ate too much. Like you know, it's.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things, that it's. I 100% agree with you that you got to stay on top of it, and that's how
Yeah.
you're going to notice the little changes in mood. And like you said, it be a hormonal thing, could it be a, you know, maybe they got in a fight with their best friend. It's going to be better tomorrow. They're going to make up, Um, but yeah, it could be something bigger. So,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
With case of my daughter, I didn't find out about a few things until later after the fact. So she definitely bottled a lot of that up. She would just go into the bathroom and cry and then come home and not talk about it. So it can be very hard. It can be challenging. I hope that my other two kids don't have to deal with anything like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That sounds really rough.
She's doing great now. She's doing great. We getting her out of school was actually the best thing ever. This is actually another piece of advice I might give to people. In general, being a Fotoko, like homeschooling in Japan, like leaving the school and doing homeschooling is very much frowned upon in Japan. And there's not any a lot of good systems in place to deal with kids who don't go to school. And so there'll be a lot of pressure on you to keep them going to school, even when it's toxic and abusive. So you'll start having meetings with the teachers. You'll start having meeting the vice principal, the principal, tons of a school counselor. Lots of people will be coming and talking to you, and everything that they're trying to do is get the child to stay in school.
In the toxic
So
situation. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and even if they recognize that it's toxic, they'll be like, "Well, we're here's what we're doing. Here's how we're trying to deal with this." But when she's going to a classroom where she doesn't have any friends and people are giving her the cold shoulder and doing weird passive aggressive shit all the time, teacher can't really fix that.
Yeah.
And so what? They send them into a different room. They go into because they've got special rooms for kids that don't get along well with other kids. And then there's even more of a gap between you and your peers. And then it just gets worse and worse. So the best thing we ever did was actually getting her out. And I left that decision to my daughter. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with making the decision not to go to school. That it doesn't mean the end of education. It doesn't mean that you're not going to become a successful member of society.
Yeah.
We can help you get to that. So don't worry about that piece. There's so much on their shoulders. They're not kids will start worrying about their future while they're worrying about all the issues that they have at school. It's just so much. So pulling her out of that environment and letting her heal was just amazing. And we did find a school. She'll be going to a different school next year that offers online or in person. She can kind of choose, mix and match in the city where you did homestay in Nagano City, actually. So she'll be taking the train, which we don't have a train. So I'll be driving her to the train station and she'll be taking the train to the city starting next year, which is kind of exciting. So to leave it on a positive note, everything did pan out well. But in this case, the solution was getting her out of the toxic environment because we couldn't control the toxic environment. We couldn't change the toxic environment. And that, unfortunately, is often the case. If you find yourself in a toxic environment, whether it be Japan or whether it be outside of Japan, you can tweak certain things, you can try out certain things, you can A/B test your life, as it were. But sometimes the results don't come in, no matter what.
Yep.
So changing environments is a pretty crucial step.
Very, yeah. Well, I found that out with work or relationship. You can put in a lot of work, but if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I had a job where I put in just endless hours of prep. And, I speak Japanese, but my coworkers were telling the boss I didn't speak Japanese. Why would your coworkers undermine you like that? Like, that's just, I wouldn't even think of doing that to somebody, right? And this is a guy who we would have, international company, we'd have meetings in English. He could barely speak English. So it was kind of funny. He would say, but then the boss saw me conducting a meeting in Japanese and I had people laughing. And he's like, wait a second. Why does everybody tell me you don't speak Japanese? I said, who's everybody? He's like, I can't tell you. But
it could be something as simple as petty jealousy.
Yeah. Well, there was one guy who was kind of like the ringleader, and he would never do anything on his own. He would tell the other people, like, hey, you know what I heard? This guy did this, you know? And then that would just plant a little bit of seed of doubt in them. Oh, you know what I heard about this guy? Oh, he's not very good at this. And then they would wait for you to make a mistake, you know, and like, and then he was like, oh, this person is going to destroy the company, so, you know, but I wish there's something we could do about it. And then he would kind of incite the other people to go to the boss, and he never would. So it's almost impossible to nail down who the real troublemaker is. So yeah, I've seen toxic
Yeah.
environments where and you spend so much time trying to unravel it that you can't even focus on your job. Like you're it's like being in politics. You spend so much time debunking all the rumors about yourself that like I got a job to do and I'm spending 20 hours out of my 40 hours putting out fires, you know. So
You can start to
my
even internalize and believe some of the rhetoric
sure,
that's
sure,
being
sure, and
not
my
that you would
solution.
believe. Oh, I don't.
No, no,
Maybe I don't speak Japanese. My point
yeah,
is
yeah,
that it's emotionally taxing, it's mentally
hmm,
taxing, and you start to mimic, in some cases, the
yeah, yeah.
vocabulary of the toxic people around you.
Hmm.
So
And then so
yeah.
my solution was to get out of that situation. And then the funny thing is, when I started working with people who like appreciate and understand my abilities and what I bring to the table, and they're like, wow, you know, we can't believe we found a good Japanese speaker who's got this skill set. Like, you know, where have you been? Like, we were looking for somebody like you. And like, wait a second, I'm not a broken toy. Like, I'm actually valuable to society. And so, getting out of
Yeah.
that crappy situation, like spending another year trying to fix it versus finding the right environment,
Hmm.
huge difference. Finding the right environment, there's like, you know, it's like the, you know, we've all heard the story of a best friend who's in a toxic relationship and he's trying to fix it. Then he meets somebody new, and like, and I hate to say like, oh, you know, finding the right one is going to fix you because I don't believe that. But getting into a good relationship after having been in a not so good relationship, you're like, wait a second, she appreciates me. She treats me with respect. She doesn't undermine me in front of my friends. Like, oh, and she just likes to be around me. You know,
Relationship dynamics are everything. I mean, this is
it's
one of the
amazing.
reasons why I love my marriage and wouldn't
Mm.
want anything more, is because it really is the bedrock for my happiness. If
Yes.
I'm fighting with my wife, I'm horrible. I feel horrible.
Mm.
Life sucks. I don't want to get out. I'm literally probably clinically depressed. So I try not to do that. I try not to. I try to think myself out of getting into fights with my wife
Mm.
because I want to feel emotionally based.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with work. It's the same thing with school.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a good, relationship with the people around you, your life is
Mm.
going to be living fucking hell. It's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
be
It
horrible.
sure can be.
So
Yeah.
getting out,
Mm.
unfortunately, in Japan, the option for most people is suicide. For them, that is getting
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So,
You've heard the.
if I could give one message to any possible Japanese viewers listening to this, it would be move to Nagano, get out in the countryside. You
Yeah.
can find a new life, but it doesn't have to be Nagano.
Yeah.
It could be anywhere. But my point is you can reset your life. You can
Yeah.
get out of whatever circumstances you're in and create a new life. A lot of people don't think they can. My daughter
Mm.
didn't think she could. I've been in situations where I didn't. Just
Sure. Sure.
getting out and starting over. It seems hard, but it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it is possible. There is a solution. It's like it's you know because when you're in the middle of something, it's kind of hard to see if you're surrounded by walls like a crab in a bucket. Like you can't see that there's a whole other world out there that you can
That's
go
exactly what
enjoy.
it's
So
like. And then once you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh my God,
yeah,
this was my world. It was like this green toxic bubble
yeah,
that I was living in. Like, what the hell?
yeah.
Like,
And what really helps is and it's not you can't just do it every day, but I always get a nice reset when I take an airplane flight. Because I look down at the world, it's like, okay, all these little houses has a story. Every car along that road has a story, but none of it matters. Like, not that I don't care. It's just like
yeah,
the person in that car could be right now like having a fight with his girlfriend and thinking the world is over, but I'm looking at it from 10,000 feet. It's like there's this. the earth is an organism moving. You see the cars going through the streets like blood through an artery. Excuse me. But you see all this life taking place, and you see it from 30,000 feet. It's there's so much more to it.
Percent.
So okay,
Well,
let's
my friend,
land the
that's a
plane
great
then.
place to end. We're at an hour and 41 minutes. You said an
Yeah,
hour. We went way
I know,
over.
I know. Well, let's land the plane then. Hey, I want to thank you for being on the show, and
My
I'll
pleasure.
get this edited up. And I love podcasts because they're so there's not a lot of production that goes into it. Maybe I cut out like a little and ah, but other than that, you
When I
know,
was dancing naked, my penis dangling in front of
yeah,
the camera there. Please cut all that out. I don't
yeah,
want any of that out there. So please
yeah.
remove that.
Okay.
All my f bombs, please remove those f bombs.
Well, YouTube
Yeah,
has a
clean it up.
rule about
Make it real clean.
the first few minutes. If you have an F bomb, they'll
Oh,
demonetize you. I forget how long you have to go, like 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it is. But
I
that's why
totally
you hear
forgot
a
about that. I
podcast.
forgot that that's your platform.
Yeah.
So, wow. If I wish you would have said that in advance,
Oh no, 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 no worries, no worries.
I would have
Because
cleaned my act up beforehand.
no, no, no. Because this is what happens, Jeff. Is like you'll hear a podcast, and the first couple minutes you hear bleeps, and then the rest of it,
Yeah,
it's just all hanging out there. And I
that's
first thought,
interesting. I didn't know that.
first time I heard that, I thought, oh, they're just getting lazy. They only deleted the first couple minutes of F bombs. Then I realized, like, if you
It's
have
the
it in the
algorithm.
first couple minutes, you have to edit it or censor it, and then the rest of it is
Interesting.
you can say whatever you want. So, but today we
Okay.
covered stuff like pandemics and
Ooh,
death and stuff. So
yeah.
this
Like there's
this is
words that YouTube does not
yeah.
like. Like
Well,
it's wild.
I
They
had
do
a
not want you talking about the P word.
I had this video where, as a lawyer, I want to give good information, not legal advice, but just useful information on living in
Hmm.
Japan. And there's, certain plants that you can't roll up and smoke in Japan, even though they have them.
Yes.
If you roll it
Yeah.
up and smoke it in Japan, you can get in a lot of trouble. And I had that in the description. I had it in the hashtag on YouTube, and I had it in the title of the
Danger.
video. I got an email.
Oh
This
yeah.
video cannot be monetized because of these words. I was like,
Yeah.
and then I read the rules. It's like you cannot glorify drug use. You cannot glorify violence. It's like I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm just giving. It's like saying, don't park
Thank you.
here.
You
You get
might
a
have to
parking
like
ticket.
blur this out. I'm thinking there's so many problematic things in this video. Now that I think about it, like you really gotta.
Oh well.
I'm sorry. Maybe we should do this again. You want to just set another time? I'll put
No,
some filters in place on my mouth.
no, no, no.
Put on
We're
a different
good.
hat. I think I could probably
We're
get a
good.
different background going. I
No,
don't
I
know.
could
Get
I
the
could
green
get a
screen
much
up.
better background, like a green screen or something. But no, no, I like
Yeah.
it raw. I like the raw conversation, the just honesty, the discovering things as you're going through the conversation, and just let it rip. So, but hey, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.